Good morning, it's Dave at All Things Important Reviews. I've got with me the San Martin Water Ghost SN017 version 3 with the updated clasp. This is going to be a full review where I'm going to ask the question, is this model, is this the best Submariner Homage watch that you can buy? I will answer it at the end of the video, and I will give my full thoughts on what I think is the answer to that question. So let's start with the basics. 40mm nominal, maxi style case, the big flat case that you get with the Rolexes, although on the latest model they have actually slimmed down the lug slightly, but this was on the Submariner for 10 years between 2010 and 2020. Stainless steel bracelet with big fat chunky links, heavy duty double lock fold over push button clasp, ceramic bezel, sapphire crystal, sunburst blue dial. Sunburst, the real Rolex Smurf, which has now been discontinued, has a matte blue dial. 200-meter water resist with an automatic, I believe, NH38 or NH35 movement, but again, it's one of them, and it's obviously a Seiko movement, a Japanese movement. So let's start with the sizing. The sizing is excellent. It is, I've measured it just before this video, it's 12.8mm thick. The thickness, that's if you measure the bottom of that to the top of there. Obviously the crystal does protrude, it is proud of the bezel ever so slightly, so that will account for some of that thickness. The diameter is about 40.3mm, so it is very true to size. The latest Rolexes, the 2020 model, the one that was released in September 2020, is nominally 41mm, but they've slimmed down the lugs, and secondly, when you actually measure it, it's only 40.5mm. So this is within 0.2mm of a real sub. The lug to lug is about 48, and the end link to end link, if you measure there to there, is about 50.5. So it's a very, very well proportioned watch. It doesn't in any capacity feel top heavy at all. It feels really nicely well balanced on the wrist, and it's a very comfortable watch. Right, let's start with the dial and crystal. So crystal is sapphire, and I believe the Cyclops is sapphire. The dial looks, of course, very similar to the watch that it's homaging. You know, Mercedes style hands, fully loomed indices with a triangle 12 o'clock and the baton, 6 o'clock with a circular other ones. They have chosen to have a sunburst dial. Now, in my personal opinion, a sunburst dial does not look as good on the blue models, and the reason is because for some reason when you sunburst the blue, it looks a touch purpley under some lights, which I really don't like. That's not to say they've done a bad effort. The Pagani have totally cocked up their sunburst blue in that it literally just looks purple. So I would not recommend buying the sunburst blue off Pagani because it just looks purple. But this one does look a decent blue. But the real Rolex Smurf, which is discontinued, that had a matte blue. And as I'm going to talk about later, I believe maybe it's because I look at too many Rolex pictures of watches that a matte blue looks unbelievably beautiful and is superior to a sunburst, in my personal opinion. But so the Chronos has the matte blue if you want to pick that up. And I'm going to review that watch shortly for you all because, well, I'll explain it at the end of this video. So, the actual dial, again, a pretty dial, a little bit minimalist in my opinion. I would have preferred a touch more writing. I would have preferred to see San Martin written beneath the logo. The logo is a touch childish. I believe it's some type of a hexagon or shape, whatever you call it, with San Martin kind of jammed inside of it. I don't think it looks like a particularly good logo. I'd prefer to always have a logo above just a sterile dial. I don't like sterile dials. I think they're too plain and crap. So I'm glad they put a logo on it, but personally I want more writing. I personally prefer the look of that, where they put Pagani Design Explorer, water resistant and all that. I think that looks a little bit more interesting than just the plainness of the San Martin, but that's you know, that's just a personal preference. There's no right or wrong answer with that. I also think the Pagani logo is better, just as just a, you know, it just looks more mature than that kind of a weird shape thing that they've got going on with the San Martin jammed inside of it. But again, it's minor gripes, and overall it looks okay. Another thing to point out is the Loomed Indices. The loom is absolutely unbelievable. The loom is one of the best looms I've ever seen on a watch. It is really beautiful, the loom. There's no question, that full marks for that. But because they've loomed it and whatever they've put on that, it doesn't match up with the whiteness of the bezel. So the markings on the bezel do kind of contrast a touch with that. They're not the same colour as the indices on the, you know, on the watch dial. Minor gripe, but again, you know, no watch is perfect. Overall, it's a very good effort, and the blue is nice. But the sunburst is also quite nice. I personally prefer it to be matte. The bezel is excellent. Again, hardly any back play. Very nice grip. You can easily move it, but there is some resistance there. Only a minor amount of back play. I will not be diving with this watch. The most I'll be doing is swimming. So again, you know, that feels totally fine to me. Cyclops is very legible. It's about 2.5 times magnification. It's totally fine. I never bother to change the dates on mechanical watches. I wear them too differently and you know, I rotate them too much. I can never be bothered to mess about with that, so I just leave them be. I don't care. I use Casio G-Shocks with radio controlled time that tell me the exact date on my phone. The crown is again excellent. They have put a marking on it. They've put a shark on it. It feels really good. No criticisms there, and I believe it is a twin lock or a double lock. So you're going to get the water resistance. As long as you screw it down properly, there's very little chance the water's going to come in there. The case, the case back is a touch, well, it's very bland. They've chosen just to go with a standard stainless steel case back with no etchings. I would prefer it to have some markings on there, you know, the model number, the manufacturer, a logo, and the water resistance. I think they should have put that on the case back. Personally, I think it's very boring to do that. You know, even this is a Liege design watch, which is much cheaper. These are about 35 quid, and they've got a nice exhibition case window, water resistance, and the model number and all that. So in my opinion, it should have an exhibition window. I think it adds depth to the watch. I think that it should have markings on there, laser etchings or whatever you want to call it, but they've chosen not to do it. That's their choice. The case is polished on the sides. Now let's talk about the bracelet. Now the bracelet is an interesting one because they've chosen, it's 20mm lug width, just about 20mm. They've chosen to go with about 3.5mm thick links, and they've chosen to go with this kind of chunky big clasp, which is fine. It's one of the best clasps I've ever used, no question about it. Other than the Rolex style clasps, this is one of the best I've ever used. It is brilliant. They've chosen to not polish the centre links. Again, on this particular model, I personally, in fact, would have preferred the centre links to be polished. That's my personal preference, but it's not. And I would also have preferred the edges to be polished. It adds more depth to the watch, but they've chosen to just brush them, which that's up to them. But I do think it looks a touch unfinished by having these just brushed. I think with that side of the case being polished, they should have polished that. To unscrew the links is one of the best one of the best feelings, you know, one of the best processes that I've ever seen in a watch. It is, the links are really easy to take out. They are a joy to use. It is one of the best constructed bracelets I've ever worn. I'm not joking. I've worn Tag Heuer's, Omegas. This is up there with them in terms of the actual performance of it and the tolerances and all that. The main gripe with the bracelet, other than the lack of polished sides, is the overall bulkiness and the overall weight of the watch with it on. And furthermore, with the clasp, even though it's a brilliant, you know, scissor clasp with 6 micro adjusts, with a very good fold over safety catch, with excellent push buttons, you know, there was no functional problem with this clasp. It is excellent. The problem is, again, it's not the thickness of it. I don't know why people mention the thickness. It's not that. The problem is, it's something to do with, it's just not as comfortable. Okay, the bracelet is not as comfortable and the clasp is not as comfortable as, say, this style of Pagani. Now, as you can see, this has the Rolex style clasp, and it also has the only 2.8mm thick, or 2.5mm, or they could be 3mm, I believe. I think they're about 2.8mm thick. Now these are 3.5mm, and the problem with that is, it's not a massive problem, but it slightly reduces the comfortability of the watch, in my opinion. I believe this is more appropriate. I think this is better on this style of watch. Now on a big Victorinox 43mm, then this would probably be better. But on a smaller 40mm watch like this, I think that, because the real Rolex doesn't have the San Martin thickness for the watch, for the bracelet, it only has these thick. So personally, I would have preferred it if they had they dropped the links down to this thickness on the Pagani. And this clasp, even though the tolerances are not as good on the Pagani, and that, you know, there is more movement in there and all that, because they have essentially copied the Rolex style, functionally it is still superior when it works to this style of clasp, and it's more comfortable. So it's a small gripe really, because it's still, the watch does not feel top heavy and it feels very comfortable on the wrist, and I'll show you on the wrist right now. Move that out of the way. Still feels very nice on the wrist. Does not feel top heavy in the slightest. It feels excellent on the wrist, but just a tiny bit, it's not as comfortable overall, both the clasp or the bracelet, it's not as comfortable as the Pagani Sub Homage. This is the 1661. Now, even though this is a better constructed watch, there's no question about it, QC, you know, the materials, the performance of the actual materials and all that stuff, it is superior on this watch, but the comfort is superior on this watch. So that's why, to answer the question, and the water resistance is obviously better on the San Martin. You're getting an excellent 200 meter water resistor. You can go diving with this thing if you want to. You know, it is an outstanding overall watch. The spec is brilliant. It is not too heavy on the wrist, that's not true. It will be slightly heavier than the Pagani, but you can wear it all day long. I've took it to work this week, no problem. But I would just prefer it. My only criticisms are the dial. Personally, I believe it should be matte, not sunburst on this model, even though on the Hulk, or the Hulk Homages, I think that it is appropriate to put a sunburst on it, because that's what Rolex did. But on the Smurf, they put a matte, And they also put polished centre links, which I prefer on this model. Again, the other criticism would be, I would love it if they changed this bracelet to a 2.8mm thick links, which would reduce it by around 25%, something like that, 20%. And probably put a gliding lock on it, like on the Rolex style clasp. Now, I think this clasp would still be very comfortable if it just had a different bracelet, just had the thinner links. And if they did that, they would have the best homage, I believe. Now then, there is a supplier called Kronos that have essentially already done that, but they've not put a gliding style lock on it. They've just put a normal Rolex style clasp on it. So do I believe this is the #1 homage watch? Currently, it's going to be a toss-up between this and Kronos. And before I answer that question, I'm gonna wait until I do the Kronos review, because I had the Kronos and I sold it, but I'm gonna buy it again in the matte blue, and I'm gonna do a video review and a comparison with this, the San Martin, the Pagani, and possibly the Parnis. But I'm definitely going to review this versus the Kronos, because the Kronos is actually thicker. It's 12.2mm thick, but the Kronos, the crystal, it sticks out by about 0.5 mil. So the thickness is actually very similar. But the Kronos is bigger in terms of the end-link to end-link by about 3 mil. But again, it all depends on how it fits on your particular wrist. So it's going to be a toss-up between this and Kronos, and I'm not going to make the decision right now, but I have a feeling, from what I remember the Kronos feeling, I have a feeling that I do actually prefer the Kronos. I think the look of the Kronos is superior, and I think the comfort of the Kronos is superior. But the build quality of the San Martin overall and the materials is superior on the San Martin. So it's a real tough one. Now, the Pagani, again, is super, super comfortable. And the Pagani is probably the most comfortable of all three. But again, this is this is an excellent homage watch. And for the money, nothing beats this for the money in terms of value. The San Martin is over double the price. This is #1 for value, because you can get it for about 70 quid. This is the one to get if you just want all round bang for buck, comfort, everything. This is the one to get. This one is excellent, but I'm not convinced that it is #1. I probably think the Kronos is superior. But again, I'm going to do the full review and comparison soon. Now then, interestingly, the last thing I'm going to mention on this, San Martin have just released, and I Like Watches have just done a review, done an unboxing, I believe, of it, a new updated version of this watch, but they've decided to call it the SN019 version 1, but really it's the version 4 of this. And with that, they've reduced the links to the thinner links, which I mentioned about. However, the first two of the bracelet, I believe, are still the same thickness, but all these will be smaller, and they've put the Rolex style gliding clasp on it. Now, I'm going to pick that one up as well, and hopefully that one will be even more comfier, but it still has the sunburst style, which I don't like. I do not like the sunburst style, and I won't buy it in all black because I find it too boring. The Submariner has been copied that much that in all black it's just boring, in my honest opinion. So I prefer it in a blue or a different colour. So I think I'm going to be preferring the Kronos, but I'm going to do the full review shortly, and I'm going to get them all to you. It's still an amazing watch. If you want to pick it up, you're getting the 316 stainless steel, heavy duty everything, heavy duty case. It feels like it'll last years. You're not going to go wrong with this watch. It'll be a great present for a friend or a family member. There's an affiliate link below if you do want to pick it up and make a small commission at no extra cost to you. It's been Dave. Thanks a lot for checking my reviews out. Thanks for checking my videos out. I do appreciate it. Watch my next ones coming up. You're going to like them. Nice one. Have a great day. Cheers.